Hi, my name is Lola Chase, and today we'll be talking about the social construction of gender. And I know, stop me right there. That already sounds pretty crazy, right? Might even sound a little bit scary. And that's because it is. It's scary to question our daily routines and our commonly held beliefs in our society because we're so used to not talking about them. That's exactly why I think it's so important to talk about it right now. As a society, we tend to ignore the things that we feel uncomfortable with. Gender is a huge example of that. In high school, I realized something. Gender is something that should be explored and questioned just like your sexual orientation or really any decision that you make in life. It's something that you can contemplate and reflect on, and you don't have to necessarily agree with all the gender stereotypes that are set up for you in your society. I became so used to wanting to wear a dress, even though I have never felt comfortable in a dress in my entire life. And me personally identifying as gender fluid, I believe in a spectrum, and that there is just a general feeling inside of yourself between male and female, and it doesn't have to do with your biological sex. Biologically, I'm a female. I've accepted that I'm a female. This is my certain perspective, and I do not represent anyone else's perspective or the LGBT community necessarily, but I am a member of that. And an interesting point to add on to that, just because you're in the LGBT community doesn't necessarily mean that you support and understand every issue regarding like trans rights and things of that sort. So, but I think it's really important that people just know that they're able to question things in their society. And that's something that we don't tend to do because it's unpopular, it's unwarranted, and people don't want to hear about it. People don't like to be questioned in the way that they do their things. And it's become so easy to do with gender in every aspect of our life and how we dress and how we act and how we interact with other people. Like when we're dating, especially, it's a very intricately choreographed mating game in which you are trying to get this end goal of getting someone to like you. And it's very much so involves so many gender stereotypes. So then it comes into the LGBT community and people are unsure how to act around each other, and that's because the construction of gender is absolutely absurd. We're all different, and we know that. We can't dictate a life based off of how they're supposed to be by our expectations. We can't box people in and dictate that they should be a certain version of themselves that they don't know. These labels distort our vision on our vision of reality and make us think that things are genetically inherited based off of our gender, and no one talks about it. We didn't get a say in our birth and how our genitalia ended up looking like, just like our physical experience, characteristics, and defining features. And our defining features are more than just what's in your pants. Necessarily, like I don't necessarily believe that it's anyone's business but my own what is in my pants, frankly. And masculinity and femininity do not dictate a person's gender. No woman is inherently and completely feminine, just as no man is completely masculine. People have characteristics. Everyone has different characteristics, but we live in a society obsessed with labeling and gendering, calling things masculine or feminine. And in reality, they're all just characteristics. We all have different characteristics and ways that we act. Gender is such a routine part of our everyday activities, and it's so pervasive in our society that we believe that it's literally in our genes. It's constantly created and recreated in social interaction out of some type of social order that we've created. And we make judgments of a person's gender, often strangers, just by how they compose themselves in public or how they dress. Gender is hardly addressed in typical settings unless there is a lack of one or a displacement from the norms placed. Social displacement is in which case people are uncomfortable until they are able to place a certain gender status on that gender deviant person. We're so structured to feel uncomfortable when we can't label something. And I think that's a part of like normal English communication is understanding what something is, and we've basically put gender as a defining characteristic of what anything is. And whether that thing is an inanimate object or an animal or a thing or a person, it's all the same. We all put masculine and feminine labels, boy, girl. We all just have these rules that we set in place. And we feel uncomfortable when they're out of place. And even gender deviants, like transgenders, are expect to uphold the expectation of the gender that they are representing. And they are still not deemed as quote-unquote normal, even though the climate of this topic is significantly changing within the past few years. Gender is assigned to a person at birth by how their genitals appear, and we are so sure of these gender assignments that when one's genitalia does not define a definitive sex, otherwise intersex, it is a common practice to perform surgical reformation and hormone treatments for the baby to grow up as one gender. And we place gender during infancy, even at conception to an extent. You talk to your baby in the womb as a boy or a girl, and even if you don't know, you have these hopes and these expectations, and it's absurd to me. You don't know if it's what this kid will end up to be, but you're going to place expectations and roles and ways that they should conduct themselves and dress and represent themselves in society just based off of what is in their pants. And we make markers like colored clothing and names to begin to shape a definitive gender as soon as they're able to comprehend, before they're able to comprehend. And there is no chance for the developing mind to escape these constructions of reality, thus creating an endless loop. And so we have this dating game between these genders set forth. And sex doesn't even come into play again until puberty. And by this time, sexual feelings, desires, or practices are shaped by gender expectations. And parenting is gendered. And a mother's role in her child's life is different from that of the father's, and that is all predetermined. And so what happens when a parental role is missing? We determine that a child is unable to develop a proper construction of this false reality of gender, and will often blame this factor to why a child may differ from gender norms, saying, oh, well, he had a single dad, that's why he's so messed up, or he just is unable to because he's only got a mom, or maybe he even has two moms. It's absurd that we think that these factors are going to negatively impact children and how they develop. Because gender has been so embedded into our society so deeply that public bathrooms and department store sections are clearly divided. We make judgments and decisions based purely on pre-held expectations of a certain gender. I've learned to fear men when I walk alone at night, because I've been taught that they are dangerous. Funny enough, men are also taught that they are dangerous, and that this is a norm to adhere to because violence is widely accepted as a normality of male masculinity. I won't get too much into how gender is represented in the mainstream media. However, I will say that 60% of our television shows represent violence, and it is often excused as okay and a proper way to assess a situation, and often has no consequence. And so, male violence is very commonly represented and typically accepted. Therefore, we have a representation of males. This is a stereotype. When it comes to gender variant people such as myself, I think of it more in a way that it's how you personally identify yourself in this realm of masculine and feminine culture. Even though I don't necessarily believe in the construction of gender, I do believe that I have more masculine traits than feminine traits, and that I do believe that I have my days where I am more feminine, even though in my pants, I am biologically female. If I were not comfortable in the body that I have, I may want to alter it. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's any more complicated. The idea of gender is all made up anyway, and so to be a variant of such, I don't think it's necessarily a big deal. I don't think it's a defining part of myself, even really. I think it's just, I'm Lola, that's who I am. There's nothing I can do about it, there's nothing you can do about it. You see what I mean? Now, by me saying that, I could, however, pretend to be a certain way and pretend to be feminine, which I often did in my early years of high school. But I was never happy. And ultimately, I think it's the conquest of happiness. As long as there is an image held and repeated to an audience, they will adapt to fit these standards, whether it be to fit in, to be accepted, or desired. All genders find themselves pulled by these factors. So that's why I believe that the social construction of gender is ultimately harmful and unnecessary in our society. Anyway, as you can probably tell, I'm really interested in gender studies and everything on the topic of gender, and I could go on about this topic for a lot longer. However, this is all the time we have for today, so thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I'm Lola Chase. This has been Lola's Talking, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully you'll tune in, and have a great day. Thanks.